Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of our behind-the-scenes videos for Cursed Empre, the tabletop RPG. Chris Loiser again here, and I'd like to spend some time today going through one of the key aspects of the game itself. I touched on it in a previous episode, but it really is very, very crucial to the to understanding how the game was constructed and how we put the whole thing together in terms of tools for the Master of Tales to run games and really get into the guts of Renown. So, without further ado, I will just take you into this. So basically, Renown itself it's a reward to some degree for actions players have undertaken, heroes have undertaken in the RPG, and it truly is the lifeblood of Thargos. And the idea is that players get to kind of almost get like a reference point in the game as to where they fit into the whole setting. So Renown drives folklore and myths and storytelling, as I mentioned earlier. And it really is key to how the game plays out. Now, it's a great tool for the Master of Tales to kind of put players into a certain context and then really let them run rip and get on with the role-playing as they see fit. So we have in the game, there are 8 ranks in the game, 8 different ranks of Renown, and ranging from rank 0 could be a local farmer or a tradesperson. Rank 1, you have some deeds of note, possibly well known in the area, and rank 2 would be, for example, talked about further afield, maybe a local celebrity, to put it that way. And then you have rank 3, high-ranking leaders with some prestige, possibly from a noble family with an additional background. And then beyond rank 4, champions and iconic leaders and heroes in the setting. And then you go beyond that, rank 5 really are heroes known throughout the realm. Rank 6 would be legends all over Thargos and leaders of kingdoms. Rank 7, almost like inspiring myths and legends. And rank 8 really is akin to demigods, known by everyone and all. So that kind of situates where kind of characters and non-player characters and opponents and so on fit in the setting. Now, one of the points of this is there's a renown mechanic in the game where you can be rewarded renown. So basically, depending on how a role-playing session works out, how people have played, what they've achieved, the Master of Tales would then award renown for that to the players. And you also gain what we call story points as well. So story points can be used, above rank renown of 18 can be used to then sometimes gain a bonus in rolls, for example, but carry out more heroic deeds in the game, and that allows for some really fun moments in terms of when you choose to use those story points. They are quite rare, so you use them sparingly, but also the nice thing about this from a role-playing perspective, you have this whole storytelling piece of troubadours and bards travelling the land and storytellers and so on, plying their trade. And that is quite fun as well, to kind of be involved in that and hear about things. And maybe sometimes Chinese whispers or certain things that are slightly different or been modified or embellished. So that can be quite fun, but it's quite a big part of the setting as well. You also have there's a correlation between renown and code of conduct. So code of conduct will come from which orders you belong to. So there's a lot of structure in the game, even despite the anarchy that reigns in many places. But you have different categories of orders. I'll just kind of use that generic term. They have different specific terms. But you have military orders in the game. You have religious military orders, mystical military orders, tribal or clan elite, different religions and cults, civic guards, magical societies, guilds and factions. There really are a whole host of gatherings with their own codes of honour, codes of conduct, laws and rules to abide by or break. So that allows for a lot of role-playing game as well. in the setting. And you'll see, I mean, this is actually, we'll be showing this obviously, but this is all part of chapter 2 in the player core book, where we cover this in a lot more detail. We also, during the course of that chapter itself, we will also be getting into detail of different orders. So there's a sampling of some of the Night Orders in the setting, which we packed into this book, and it takes us through all the Imperial Night Orders and some of the Karnakos ones as well, which is great. I think some of the key things as well is there are multiple notions being part of an order. Once again, double-edged sword, a recurring theme here, but the idea that you have a code of conduct which is pretty strict. So there's the loyalty element, of course, loyalty to your order, devotion, and that how it manifests itself depending on what entity you join or what order you join. Duty, a notion of duty as well. Honor, obviously, these things go hand in hand. So also very much inspired by looking at also the ancient Japan as well, in terms of its culture there, of honor and warriors and loyalty. So that is also pretty vibrant in the setting of Cursed Empire as well. It's something I really like historically as well, but that comes across. Also things, other core themes of self-sacrifice, another big one. If I go back to the 300 Spartans and King Leonidas, for example, and the sacrifice they made when Persia invaded Greece, ancient Greece. But, so there's lots of notions of self-sacrifice, of duty, honor, and of course all the other characters get up to other stuff in between and they kind of play on that and get you into a lot of trouble or enjoy breaking the rules and so on. So, and of course then you kind of fall into the side of criminality as well, and there is a criminal underworld as well, which I'll touch on another session, another episode. But basically that's also another big part of the setting in terms of gangs and crime and so on. A lot of imperial cities do struggle obviously with controlling crime. And another point I mentioned in the previous episode about a lot of the team. I think it's a good juncture here just to also mention, of course, the massive contribution we've had from Max Bantelman, who's a long-standing role player, quite well known in the kind of UK gaming convention circuit, for running some fantastic games, and he's been instrumental. He's been really one of the locomotives in this rewrite. He's done a huge amount of work on 3rd edition, and he was a big fan of the setting. He likes crunchy rules and crunchy combat himself, a little bit like me, but equally he really understood that 3rd edition had to evolve. It really had to move on and become a lot more acceptable, more easy to get into and more pleasant to get into without all the crunch. So it was interesting how we went from the initial core stats in 2nd edition and 1st edition from I think 10, 12 down to 3 now, which are might, mind, and mysticism. So might, we'll cover this obviously in the character creation, but I'll try and get these 3 core stats explained. Might is very much a kind of physical attribute, a physical catch-all, which captures the notion of the strength, the physical strength, muscular strength, but also the athletic capability, dexterity, agility. You can have someone who's very, very physically strong but be a little bit clumsy, someone who's very agile but not be physically strong, very fast though. So really it's a catch-all. So the higher the attribute, the better you are doing physical stuff, physical actions. Then you have mind, and mind is very much a catch-all also for anything to do with the intellect, intelligence, IQ, wisdom, knowledge, all rolled into one again. You can have someone's very smart but not being highly educated. You can have someone highly educated not very smart as well. But basically, it's a catch-all for that. And then mysticism is an interesting one, where it's a catch-all also for spiritual capabilities, meditation. Obviously, spellcasting and magic is a big part of that, and that's the catch-all for the more spiritual essence based in this game as well. It's one of the kind of key concepts as well for magic in the setting. Now, another contributor I also had to mention is Kevin Dern as well. Has been a long-standing fan of the games, has been GMing or being a Master of Tales for Cursed Empire for many years. Was involved really early on, in just after first edition came out, and he's been involved in helping us a lot of some of the rewrites and certain pieces of the work we're working on at the moment. Just take the second edition non-player character conversion, help on some of the magic rules and so on, and also we're really looking into now the kind of solo side of things, and I'll be doing hopefully an episode on solo role playing, which is quite new to us in this team. So yeah, in terms of going back to the notion of Renown, so in the book, and you'll be seeing extracts, of course, the book. In chapter 2, we go through a lot of the night orders, gives you a really good idea of that, and then you have more information about some of the other orders and guilds and factions that form part of Cursed Empire. So yeah, but we hope that's been useful. That's just a little shorter episode on Renown, but it's an important one because it's really one of the building blocks of the whole RPG, and it's a key one as well at that. So it really is down to how players want to use that mechanic to drive narrative role playing. And it's a nice, simple way for any Master of Tales and their gaming group to really tailor the game to their tastes. So high fantasy, heroic, more modest kind of medieval kind of environment or vibe. So obviously the more renown you put in, the more that becomes an important part of things, the more heroic deeds have to happen, and the more kind of high fantasy stuff you get into. I think it's worth also mentioning some of the core themes again at this juncture, because they are connected to how people role play the game itself. Are the notion of epic, and giving epic our own definition, because it's different things for different people. But from our point of view, there's a kind of correlation between epic and tension again, and I mentioned this in a previous episode, but tension, the more tense situation is, the more stake there is, the more potential fallout or risk there is. That really is a big part of things. So the epic nature of the game manifests itself in the following way. You can have situations that are very high risk with a huge amount of risk for the characters, and can sometimes be down to a single dice roll. But once again, that's also down to the Master of Tales, how they want to run that. But I tend to like that in games where people can get a lot of role playing in, do their research, do their homework, but still it can come down to something really critical right at the end of the game, of the gaming session, or end of a campaign milestone, for example, the boss fight, some major encounter. Just want that tension, that kind of epic feel. Also, epic manifests itself also through some of the mechanics, like we have, of course, critical roles, and you'll see that more. We'll cover that more in detail as well. But critical roles and fumbles, so where things go terribly wrong or really well, and you get these kind of extreme cases of outcomes, which are really interesting. So that reinforces the epic nature as well, and also the context of what's at stake. You have a crumbling empire on its knees, just fighting for survival. And then you have the southern Karnakos just trying to topple what's left of it. But it's not as binary as that. It's not as simplistic as that. Sometimes you hear criticism of role-playing games. Those are the good guys, the bad guys, and that's it. And no, this is a lot more complex than that, because you have it within the different groups and groupings and alliances, a lot of other things going on, other layers to the game for the players and the Master of Tales to explore. Other things here, just... is really about cinematic. What does that mean as well for people? I mean, I'm a huge movie buff. I've been collecting films for a long time, and I'm really into films. Probably noticed some of the stuff behind me, but cinematic for me has to be something which is quite visual. So that is supported by the artwork, of course. But also how things play out, how the Master of Tales describes things. And we tend to, I know Max and myself and other Masters of Tales, we like to really play on the senses. You really not just describing what you see but also what you hear, what you smell, everything, the whole atmosphere. So all the senses are kind of stimulated, and the imagination gets more fired up. So that kind of cinematic feel, where you see mist floating in across a plain, and sheets of rain coming in from the west, and suddenly visibility has dropped, and and you just you can see the mist of your breath in the air, and things starting to kind of happen and around you, and something starts to go slightly wrong or feel wrong, and you just build that up. So the kind of cinematic piece, as an avid cinema goer and movie collector, that's something I try and create in the games, and I think that's supported also by the soundtrack, Chaz Wing's soundtrack I mentioned as well. But then you have other key, obviously classic theme, but fantasy. It means there's a fantasy, a lot of imaginary stuff that happens, like magic and creatures and monsters. But we try to make magic volatile, quite unpredictable, and creatures to be pretty brutal and pretty dangerous and quite rare. And I mentioned this before. But we also try to make players feel, try to reset their reference points for gameplay. And what I mean by that is get them back to having the tense feeling, the tension, the kind of fear factor, the concern about their actions they're going to undertake, and the dilemmas they face. But yeah, and fantasy for me has to be grounded in reality. Any good fantasy. So that's why things that may seem boring, like trade, and this city trades in copper and bronze, and and animal furs and so on. It's really important, because without trade, without society, without societal structures, politics and so on, the whole thing just can't hang together properly and work. And then really, one of the key things for me is memorable. I was at UK Game Expo last year in June 2023. And I had a gamer come up to me on our stand, and he said, "Do you recognise me?" And I looked at the guy and I thought, "Yeah, I've seen this guy before. His face looks familiar, but I can't quite remember exactly where from." And he says, "Last time we met, I was 18. It was 20 years ago, and you ran a game for us, a game of Cursed Empire, all those years ago at a small convention in the UK." And he said, "We still remember that game, and we still talk about it." So the memorable aspect, for me, is absolutely crucial. And once again, how do you make it memorable? Got to be epic. Got to be those crazy moments where everything's on a knife edge, everything's going to go horribly wrong, and it somehow works. And those make for memorable experiences, and sometimes memorable deaths. Sometimes, so these things do happen in the game. It can be, they can be just as memorable, maybe for the wrong reasons sometimes. But we tend to find that the more kind of visually stimulated players are, the more epic the situation they're put into, the tougher things get. But if they've done their homework, they have a chance. If they've done their research, if they've done their investigations, they may have a chance. It's going to be tough. But yeah, so the memorable aspect is another key part of this. So that's another, that ties in with Renown. So on that note, I'll stop rambling, and we'll be looking forward to you in episode 4. Thank you for tuning in, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.